one thing that I've been very fortunate to have is a career that has been full of either excitement or experiences or lessons. And I'd say one of the biggest reasons for a lot of the pivots is the need for growth, but the need for growth given what was happening also in the economy at the same time. Right. So one thing that I'm very acutely aware of is how things are changing very fast and how they're changing at an exponential rate the further the time goes on. Right. With new technologies, with AI, with social media, all of these revolutions, if you will, have changed the job market and they changed the workforce.
LinkedIn is really good at lying to us. It rewards certainty even when it's premature. It celebrates momentum even when it's misdirected. And it convinces us that doubt is a weakness instead of a signal. In this episode, Saeed Selvam and I talk about what happens when you stop optimizing for optics and you start paying attention to what actually fits. From nonprofit leadership to big tech to entrepreneurship, Saeed shares the uncomfortable lessons behind each of his pivots and why security dulls your instinct, because instinct is what sharpens your survival. If your career looks better than it feels, well, this episode is probably for you. Saeed, so good to have you here. Thank you for joining the show, Pause to Pivot. It's been a long time since I know we've had a chance to chat one-on-one, but you are a former colleague, a good friend, and so happy that you're able to join us on the podcast today. Maybe we could just kick things off by getting a bit of an overview of who you are and, beyond the LinkedIn, social media stuff that we may see on the media about you. Give us a bit of insight as to who you are. Quick overview about your background and your story.
Yeah, it's a great question, Charles. Thank you. And I had to think about it for a little bit because you're so used to giving your career right off the bat.
Yes.
The job description. So who am I beyond the job description? I think that I'm somebody who's always tried to make anywhere that I've been in better than the way I found it. And I've always tried my best to be collaborative and focus on issues. I grew up in Toronto, and I think one thing that I saw, especially within my community and within other communities around the city as well, is that many of the systems that are out there didn't necessarily apply to certain people in the community. And I always wanted to figure out how I can be useful and how I can be valuable and how I can make some sort of an impact and make some sort of a difference. So I remember early on when I was in high school, and as part of the Mike Harris mandate, you had to get involved in 40 hours of community service.
Right. Yes.
Right, in order to graduate. Yep. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. A lot of people were like mowing lawns and helping old people cross the street. And I'm like, that doesn't sound fun enough. So let me
people cross the street. We can do better than that. Yes.
That's it. So I'm like, let me try and figure out something that might be a little more exciting for me. So my mom brought my attention to a poster that she had found in the mail, and the poster was from a City of Toronto publication, and it said, "Join the Toronto Youth Cabinet." Ooh. And I was like, "What's the Toronto Youth Cabinet?" I was like 16 years old, and the Youth Cabinet, for those that don't know, is essentially Toronto's official youth representatives in the City of Toronto. So it's a body that was created by Olivia Chow, who was then Councillor Olivia Chow, and it's essentially a group that is supposed to advocate for young people in the city. So I'm like, okay, let me try it out. And I got involved in the youth cabinet, and not knowing much, I ran for a position. It was Director of Youth Police Relations. Okay. And this is a group that takes itself very seriously. So I felt all kind of neat just being Director of Youth Police Relations. Now, mind you, the campaign wasn't that difficult because It was uncontested, so I won by default.
Look at one to know. I love it. Yes,
that's it. I won by default, and I got into that. But there was an incident that happened while I was with the youth cabinet, which was the unfortunate Boxing Day shooting. So it was December 20, 2005.
Yep.
It was a gang shootout downtown Toronto. Many who've been around for a long time will remember that. And unfortunately, it took the life of a 15-year-old. Her name was Jane Priva. And at that time, I wanted to, start talking about all the ways that we could reduce crime in Toronto's neighborhoods and all across the city. And I found that it wasn't being talked about in a way that addressed root causes. It was sort of a tough on crime approach that the city was approaching it with, and the police and things like that. So I'm like, you know what, let's call a press conference and talk about the needs in these communities, but also talk about how we can be tough on crime as well at the same time and strike that delicate balance. And that press conference got national attention and created a bit of a snowball, which got me involved in things like government relations and media relations and meeting all kinds of politicians and policymakers across the board. So it wasn't necessarily the plan to be where I'm at today. But it was volunteering and doing something that I felt was bigger than myself at the time that put me on the path that I'm on today.
Wow. I never knew that was your origin story, Matt. I've known you for so long, but I love that. That's incredible. So were you always civically minded? Is this something that, so if it wasn't by chance that your mom had seen that flyer, was it something that were you ever involved in student council or student government in high school, or were you one that was a bit more of an activist, would you say, earlier on, or
not always an activist, but I think my first inclination into sort of like doing something that was civically minded was following 9/11. And I saw the events unfold, after 9/11. And myself and a friend were like, we got to do something. We're very young. What could we do? And we saw what was happening, and we're like, you know what? We want to figure out how we can help. And we just went door to door fundraising for the Red Cross at the time. And they're doing a lot of work around Ground Zero and helping with the recovery efforts.
Yeah.
So I started knocking on doors, and the one thing that stuck out to me was that, people were willing to give to total strangers for a cause that was bigger than them. And I saw the passion of people, and I saw the care of people. And that's something that really stuck out to me. So ever since I did that, I'm like, you know what? It's important to be able to demonstrate empathy, even for issues that don't necessarily affect you directly. Because I feel that makes your life fuller. It makes your life impactful. And it goes back to, wanting to leave wherever you're at a bit better than the way you found it. That to me is how you do it. You do things, you find a cause or you find something that's bigger than yourself, which is a lot more interesting and a lot more fulfilling than just trying to get ahead.
I love that, Saeed. I think you're very much, I think one of the reasons why we connected so early on, at least early on in my career, particularly my tenure here in Toronto, is the fact that you're very much an old soul. I think so many people at that stage in their life would not be thinking of giving back or would not be thinking of, others, right? It's very much, particularly now, at that age, very much an insular kind of feeling of looking at yourself and, what can I do? How can I benefit? Sort of seeing things as a zero-sum game of where I win and you lose, that type of thing. And so the fact that you're looking to improve the betterment of others or trying to address a concern or a cause is that something that, would you say, is part of your upbringing, part of the, what you were raised in, or is it just something that's in your DNA, someone who, in terms of who you are?
Yeah, I, like many Torontonians and Canadians, am a son of immigrants, so I come from like a working class family, both my dad's side, my mom's side, even my stepdad's side as well. So I've seen the importance of not taking things for granted. I've seen the importance of character building experiences. So seeing how struggle shapes people. But service in and of itself oftentimes is a luxury, right? Like it's very hard to give back when you're trying to figure out how to put food on your table.
Yes.
It's very hard to get back when you're focused on yourself. So I think that, and this is huge praise to my mom and my stepdad at the time, who created a stable and solid foundation for me to be like, look, like I just wasn't, I wasn't a superstar athlete. I wasn't a budding rapper or anything like that. So let me find something a little more productive to do with my time rather than just messing off here. And honestly, I found that there was a lot more fun doing this type of work, because when you try and do something for others, it's very interesting. You start to find a group and a community very quickly. It's honestly one of the most non-isolating things to do, and you don't know where they're going to come from. It may not be your friends, it may not be your family, but when you start doing something, you oftentimes find that people are willing to help.
I love that. So, I mean, you say that you weren't a budding athlete or aspiring rap artist, but the places that you've worked in your career, when you look at your profile, when I look at your profile, I'm blown away at the places that you have worked in some very highly reputable, strong brand name organizations, right? And so when you think about each of your time at each of these different places, places that you've worked, whether it was Google, whether it was, working in a government relations firm or government, each shift must have come with some sort of, I don't know, second guessing. Like, did you have an internal dialogue? What did it sound like during those transitions, when you're going from each place and as you were looking to move up your career ladder and sort of looking at sort of a more substantive career as you're moving further into your own career?
Yeah, one of the challenges of growing up as a millennial, Charles, in Toronto is the increasing cost of living, right? So if you look at my career path, there's a lot of zigzags, there's a lot of changes. There are some drastic changes, like I pivoted out of the nonprofit sector right into the private sector, into tech. And I'd say that each one of those positions were extremely fulfilling. I took so much away from each one of those experiences. One thing that I've been very fortunate to have is a career that has been full of either excitement or experiences or lessons. And I'd say one of the biggest reasons for a lot of the pivots is the need for growth, but the need for growth given what was happening also in the economy at the same time. Right. So one thing that I'm very acutely aware of is how things are changing very fast, and how they're changing at an exponential rate the further the time goes on, right? With new technologies, with AI, with social media, all of these revolutions, if you will, have changed the job market and they changed the workforce. And as a result of that, I have been in great positions working with some phenomenally smart people who have been able to be at the cutting edge of addressing some of these issues. And me being able to demonstrate value and impact to each one of those roles is something that I'll never take for granted. But, when I feel that I can deliver impact or value in the next role in a bigger way, then that's something that I feel is always a good time to kind of be like, okay, well, maybe I need to pass the baton type of thing.
So. Okay. So when you look back at each of those experiences, was there a particular pivot that felt the riskiest, and what convinced you to take that step anyway?
The big one was from the nonprofit sector to the private sector. That is a very big pivot, and it's a very difficult pivot. Now, mind you, it all kind of goes back to that origin story of 2005 with the youth cabinet, right? Like I didn't know that I was going to be in a world of politics, public sector, charities, nonprofits. But you get into that again when you're volunteering, right? So you start to build up a network. And as a result of that network, it kind of angles you in a certain career path. So before I could think of exactly what I wanted to do, certain opportunities presented themselves that I happened to be like, okay, this fits with where I feel I can deliver the most value right now. At the, again, and that's working in government, that's working as a charitable funder in the Trillium Foundation with you. I worked at the Laidlaw Foundation. So working on different sides of the table was something I was very interested in because it allowed me to see things from multiple perspectives. And that has been a big thing of mine as well. I've always been wanting to understand different perspectives and understand where people came from. And the biggest pivot for me was from the Laidlaw Foundation, which I spent a lot of time at, to the tech sector, where I worked at Applyboard and Google. And it was very hard to pivot out of that because, tech would typically look at somebody coming from the nonprofit sector and be like, well, you're not coming from another big tech company, or what is it that you have to offer us other than being in our CSR roles?
Right.
One thing that I found is that when you are trained to do a lot with a little, you become very resourceful. And that resourcefulness should always be seen as an asset rather than a liability. So, if somebody doesn't have a big name on their resume, a lot of these careers and a lot of these professions can be taught, but attitude and resourcefulness, it's very hard to teach that.
Right.
So that pivot for me was big because it was fraught with a lot of rejection. I was fully qualified. I had a good resume, but when you're competing in a competitive pool where there are thousands of applicants against you, it's very hard. So it took about a number of years, I'd say, to go from the public sector to the private sector. And the big differences between the two sectors, besides the fact that one is nonprofit and the other one, it's all about profit. The big difference is that the mandates are different, right? You're selling, you are focused on bottom line. Whereas in the nonprofit sector, it's supposed to be about impact and it's supposed to be about community giving. But again, depending on which organization you're at, if the organization is not funded well enough, it's very difficult to have impact, right? And that's a whole conversation about the nonprofit sector that could be had. I'm sure it'll be its own dedicated podcast. But that pivot was important for me because, again, I wanted to understand and learn a little bit more about how innovative companies, specifically tech, did things to make people's lives better, like the B2C world, right? So not just social impact, but if you look at what Google Maps has done for the world, it's pretty inspiring and it's pretty impactful, right? But is it going to get a Nobel Prize anytime soon? No, but its impact can't be understated, right? So the importance of impact for me was really key to me understanding sort of how companies innovate and how they do what they do.
Most people would be listening and hearing your story and making that leap from the nonprofit to the for-profit, particularly into big tech, would, we as human beings like to put ourselves in boxes, and the world often puts us in boxes as well. So the fact that you had the panache to be able to say, you know what, I'm still putting my hat into the ring. I still think there's an opportunity for me to have an impact in this particular sector, which is, sort of atypical from what I've done so far in my career. Like, what was it that made you think that you could make this pivot, that you had the skills, the confidence to make this pivot? Like, what did you have to tell yourself? Because I mean, people who are listening, going through the same thing, would love to be able to know, like, what is it that you told yourself or others told you to be able to make that pivot, to know that you were a viable candidate to be able to work in big tech, particularly from someone coming from a very different sector?
Well, at that point, I had been in the nonprofit sector for about 10, 15 years.
Wow.
So I had put in quite a bit of time from starting off as a volunteer and then community advocate and community activist onwards. So I felt that I had spent a lot of time in that sector and I wanted to build up skills. But two, I've always had a very big interest in what technology could do for people. I've been very interested in innovation, just overall, because I'm like, if we could prioritize, social well-being or building something that makes a big impact on humanity, the same way that companies prioritize the iPhone or an operating system or, making an electric car. You could do a lot. So I was always interested in their ability to build products and services that were changing the world in a different way. And that's what drew me to a lot of those positions and also those companies where I learned a lot of their ways in terms of how to innovate and how to do business better.
So that's interesting. As I'm hearing you sort of provide those insights, those are things that, you would hear, innovation, improvement, sort of society-wide. But is there anything about you specifically that you felt that you could put your hat in the ring for those jobs? Is it again, your upbringing? Is it just the fact that you're like, listen, I have something valuable that these guys need to hear and need to have, which is why I need to take this step to be able to put myself forward for a position in big tech or in any other sort of sector that I don't have experience in? Can you share a bit of insight around that?
Yeah, well, the experience that I gained in the nonprofit sector, but also as a community advocate, was in the political realm, right? Ever since that incident, I was being thrust into a leadership position where I'd be consulted by heads of government and heads of state, and I started to do media interviews and speaking on behalf of, again, a certain age demographic as well at that time. So as a result of that, whether it's a pigeonhole or not, I managed to build up a skill set in public policy and communications and marketing, right? That's just something that I was able to build up and start to enjoy and become quite good at. And again, having started with very little resources to then pivoting into careers where you're working with companies that have all the resources in the world, you truly see how with the right skill set, as long as you put the right fuel behind it, you can have massive impact all over the world in a business sense.
It's interesting because, one of the things I love about looking back on your career is the fact that once you've reached that plateau, once you've outgrown that opportunity, you look to pass on the baton, as you were saying earlier. A lot of people stay in jobs they've outgrown because, for a variety of reasons, they're scared of losing security or status or stature, right? And so what's one belief you had to let go of before you could make that sort of that next career leap when you look back on your own career today?
That the position that I'm currently in is less risky than the next.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, okay.
So a lot of people, and now as an entrepreneur, I feel that even more so. But again, I feel that even more so today, given the way the economy is going, right? Okay. So I find entrepreneurship right now, as long as you are the type who can be an entrepreneur, I find that to be less risky than having a job.
Really? Okay. Why is that? Yeah.
Well, because if you have a skill set, regardless of what it is, and that skill set is in demand by some portion of the public and they're willing to pay for it, I find that you have less risks to your income than if you were to work in a large matrixed organization where the threats to your income are performance, workplace politics, right? Like certain things that you cannot control within your organization. So I actually find that, but again, this applies only to people, like there are people who I feel can be entrepreneurs and there are people who I feel are great in a work office, typical T4 setting. And there's nothing wrong with either. But I think that if you wake up every morning of your life and you're not happy with what you're doing, you might either want to change your career, change your job, or ultimately maybe even become self-employed. Not to say that was the path that got me to where I am, but having known a lot of people in the same or similar situations, that was one of the cases, which is they're just not happy with where they're at.
Right. Yeah. You're now running your own shop, right? You've gone through. You've worked in the nonprofits, big tech, number of GR firms, very prominent, very very, very key to a number of clients that you've worked with in the past and are working with now, but you're now running your own shop. What's kind of surprised you about stepping out on your own? What was the part that no one warned you about?
A lot of pleasant surprises, to be honest. A lot of people have come out of the woodwork to support in many ways. Some clients have come by without me expecting them to, which is always a nice problem to have.
That's great.
But it's not typical, right? Results may vary, right? So
right.
I know that the entrepreneurship journey is up and down for people. And this is not my first foray into entrepreneurship. It's just my first foray into entrepreneurship at this scale, where there's kind of like, there's no parachute, there's no plan B.
Right.
There's always things like side hustles and things like that I experimented with, but I felt that it was those experiences that helped me get the confidence to go into this one. So the biggest surprises, again, have been pleasant so far. I think that's because I'm aware of the unpleasant surprises as well. So being prepared for those, I could have only been prepared because of the experience that I've had in the work, and also doing similar work. Like even in my past two roles, I was building out and scaling a GR and PR firm with the safety of a larger organization. But because I've done it before and I've had the practice, I've prepared for some of those challenges.
I love that. In other conversations that we've had, do you wish that you would have done it sooner?
Yes, 100%.
Really? Right, yeah. Why?
Without a doubt. Because when you start to do it, you realize having control over your own time and your own destiny there's nothing like it, especially if you're an entrepreneur, though. Again, if you're about a stable paycheck and you want to work within a certain environment and you want those benefits and things like that, again, that may be for you. But as an entrepreneur, if you've been in the workforce, but at your core, you've been an entrepreneur for so long, it's the type of thing that you just need the confidence and the courage to do it. Yeah.
If you could go back to one earlier version of yourself, whether it be the person at Trillium or at Laidlaw, or even actually that individual who was, think about the individual, you got the flyer from your mom about youth cabinet and then being able to sort of get involved at the civic level. What's the single piece of advice you wish you had heard sooner?
Put your oxygen mask on before you help others.
I love that.
Let me contextualize that.
Saeed, let
me contextualize that, though. So, given all of the public sector stuff and voluntary stuff that I was doing, again, I was at home, right? Yeah. So I was able to do a lot of these things on a volunteer basis, but because the involvement started to ratchet up quite a bit, a lot of these positions didn't pay as a volunteer. So I went right from some of these positions into running for office, and I ran in 2014 for city council. And when you run for city council, you're also not making an income.
Yes, you're actually telling me this.
You're actually losing income.
Yes.
So, so these are of course challenges. And when you're a very young person who has just recently graduated from a master's program, your wife has just recently graduated from law school.
Right.
It's not the ideal time to take a 1 year off and start knocking on doors. But again, I did it because I felt I could provide a viable alternative to the civic leadership in the area at that time, and given my background. So I did it. I got crushed afterwards, learned a lot, don't regret it.
Like what? What was the one thing you learned through the experience? Yeah.
Most importantly, that being good at debates, having really good policy, having great solutions, a strong volunteer team, getting people involved in politics who have never been involved before, having all of that does not win you elections.
What does?
You need strategy.
Okay.
You need strategy. You need to understand the environment you're in. You need to have some veteran campaign folks on your side as well. That always helps in terms of that strategy. Again, I ran when I was 24 years old.
Right.
So I ran, very young, and without much mentorship or guidance. But I find that if you are open-minded, when you lose, you understand how to win. That applies to a lot.
Yeah,
that applies to a lot, right? As you don't see it as a failure, you see it as a learning opportunity. So, that was a challenge, but again, you learn a lot, and that's the campaign side. But you also learn a lot about the public and people and society, right? Like you learn how much of a bubble many of us are in, and how much more isolated we've become with social media. Because when you're knocking on doors and thousands of doors, you really start to see a very interesting representation of society. People who think just like you behind the door, and then people who have views that you would have never thought they would behind the door. So part of this understanding where people's motivations and insights and values come from, you can definitely find that knocking on doors, canvassing, and running for office. It's an incredible experience.
I believe you. Humbling as well, I'm sure.
Very much so.
Would you consider doing it again?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It puts your family through a lot. It puts your friends through a lot.
Especially this day
puts
and
yourself
age.
through a lot.
Yeah.
But as I was saying about the financial part too, and the oxygen mask part, doing that, there's also an opportunity cost, right? So, during that critical time, it delayed my fiance and I at the time. So she was my fiance. It delayed our ability to get married. It delayed our ability to have a family. It delayed our ability to actually buy a home, like all that stuff, right? So
all the adulting stuff, yeah.
Politics is one of those things where it's supposed to be accessible to everybody. A democracy is really interesting because it's supposed to be like anybody who has a good idea or who has the means can run for office. But you truly understand that, it's expensive to run campaigns, and it is expensive to do a lot of these things. So there's a lot of financial considerations, and that's why, people tend to do it when there is some sort of stability behind them.
Right. So you take us back to that moment where you decided to, and maybe it wasn't in one particular moment, but you'll share that with us. But this idea when you had this moment where you realize, I don't want to sit inside someone else's system anymore. I want to build my own thing. Maybe it was an idea that's kind of percolated over the course of your career. Maybe there was a straw that broke the camel's back. Can you take us a bit more back to that moment or that thinking and how it evolved and to where you are now?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was one particular moment. I would say that it was a buildup over time. So having been politically entrepreneurial for a very long time, and having founded a nonprofit organization early in my career, the business side just made sense eventually. When I was able to see that I was able to navigate large-scale corporations that had global recognition and a lot of resources, and that all of these organizations and corporations are made up of people, smart people, but at the end of the day, people, you realize that it's really just a matter of you going all in on yourself,
right,
to be able to do your own thing. And again, though, it's for a specific entrepreneurial type. If you're not entrepreneurial and you crave that stability and security, it may not be for you. But if you don't mind calculated risk and you have something to offer the market that is different than what's currently on offer, then I would say go for it. And it was about time this past year where I felt that everything aligned. The timing was right. It was the birth of my second son. Everything just worked. So I'm really happy to have made the leap. And I'm very grateful to have a supportive spouse as well who has been tremendously supportive. So
amazing. What's been the biggest challenge?
When you start off a business like a consulting firm, it's hard to do. It's not hard, but it's you're not working with a group of people anymore, right? So sometimes it can get a little bit lonely. But that's why I was very fast with hiring our first public affairs coordinator probably a few months later, and that has really helped with that. Just having somebody to bounce ideas off of and work with, that is always a thing. But that and accounting, I have to figure that out.
Okay, fair enough.
One's annoying. That one, the bookkeeping, accounting, that stuff is annoying. But other than that, it's been fun. I honestly am so grateful for the opportunity, and I'm so grateful to have finally gone all in on this.
Nice. I don't know, for someone like me who's also kind of moved towards the entrepreneurship side of things there. I don't know, I feel like in many ways you have to almost kind of feel the pain. I mean, you've seen it in many different ways because of the fact you've worked in a wide variety of GR firms, more on the policy side. But one of the pieces of advice I was given by another mentor also on successful entrepreneur, he's like, you need to feel the pain. You need to see how things work, understand how the systems work, how they all work before you just decide to outsource it without really having a sense of what's underneath the hood. And so I've appreciated that because I now have a better sense of what my expectations are of the work, who I think I need to actually perform the work, what I want to see as the outcome or the output of the work as well. So when someone says it takes X number of hours, but I know intuitively should only take X minus something number of hours for the quality of work that I'm looking for, at least I've gone through that experience and I've kind of, I've got the war wounds to show for it. So I think that's something that I've really appreciated it and learned as part of the experience too.
And experience is one of the only things that could have led you to understand what is good and what is bad.
Exactly.
In terms of quality. So while I say that I should have done this a lot earlier, I'm only able to do what I'm doing now at the level that I'm doing it at because of the experiences that I've had.
Completely. I completely agree. Even this whole venture of, this focus of mine to speak on stages, right? And I often say to myself, I should have done this earlier, but I would not have the network I have now because I've been fortunate like you, very grateful, very privileged to have had the network of people who have come out and supported me, not only see me on stage, but have opened up doors and provided these opportunities for me, right? And so if it wasn't for me having those opportunities early in my career to be able to at least establish a rapport or connection, or at least be able to prove myself to those individuals when I was working with them, there's no way that I'd be able to be as successful as I am now much earlier in my career. So I mean, it's easy to take your current situation and go backwards and say, well, this is of course how it would be if I was 10 or 15 years younger, right? But it doesn't work that way. I'm here now based on the years of experience that I've been able to have, based on the foundation that I've been able to establish because of all those years of experience and all the variety of roles and companies that I've worked for. So I can completely relate to what you're saying there. Yeah.
And what you've done, Charles, is just so enviable to be able to take a trip around the world and take time out for yourself and be able to pause is extremely inspiring. I think it's something that everybody wants to do, whether it's secretly or not so secretly. Definitely something that I want to do as well.
It's true.
But that is something that is so aspirational, and that really just knocks the trend of climbing the corporate ladder. And it's, your story is just something that so many more people have to hear of because life's short, right?
That's short.
Time is one thing that we're not getting back.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people are waking up to that fact. And that's why you're seeing so many people go off and either start their own things or do something different. But the whole corporate ladder climb is definitely losing a lot of its luster.
Yes, I mean, there's a variety of things. Maybe it's just all of us becoming self-aware, the baby boomers becoming older, your parents getting older as a result of that, the pandemic, the volatility in terms of the economy, geopolitical events. Pick your poison. And there's a wide variety of reasons that way. And it's good to see people become much more self-aware and also to take calculated risks, as you said earlier, and betting on themselves more so than I think at any other time that I can think of or I'm aware of. Over sort of the last 20, 30, 40 years. So it's been interesting and fun to watch, but I know, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a rewarding and fulfilling experience. And I love the fact that the impact and sort of the impact that's had on other people and the way people have resonated with the story as well. So no, it's been a formidable journey. Lightning round, just a couple of quick questions I want to ask you, get your insights on.
Yes.
First thing, what is one political cliche that absolutely needs to be retired?
A political cliche.
Yes.
Needs to be retired.
Yes. Anything that you see, it's something that you've seen time and time again. You're like, okay, we've seen this, we've been here, got the t-shirt, we're going to retire this, we're going to move on. It's been overdone.
Yeah, that one's a hard one because it's not so much that they're cliches.
Yes.
It's, you'll hear people say that every vote counts.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
And it does. But it depends on who shows up en masse.
Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah.
Right? Like, the voting system that we have is very different. The first past the post system is very different.
Yeah.
And how we choose our elected representatives is different than how the political parties, even within their parties, choose their leaders.
Right.
Right. So like the Liberals, I believe the Conservatives as well, they use ranked ballot systems. Right. So oftentimes the person who wins or becomes leader will actually get more than 50% of the vote, as in the majority has elected that person. Right. More than 50%. Whereas when you have a federal election, the first past the post system, you don't necessarily get a prime minister who has been elected by the majority of Canadians. So that is, I guess, a bit of a myth about Canadian democracy, is that the majority speak, and the majority outcome usually wins. It's not always the case.
Well, good. Well said. Okay, nice. Great insight there. Who would you say is Canada's most underrated political leader, either past or present?
Underrated political leader, past or present. I would say, and they have to be political.
Yeah, ideal. Oh, well, unless you've got someone else in mind, I'd love to hear that. Yes.
Underrated. That's a hard one too.
Or overrated, if you want to go there. Yeah.
I need some more time to think about these. The nature, Charles, the nature of my business too is that you have to be able to maintain friendships across all three parties.
Of course.
So I want to make sure that I don't offend anybody and I don't leave anybody out.
We can move on.
Let's skip that one. Let's skip that.
Not a problem. Yeah. So if you had 30 seconds to prep a first-time candidate before a debate, what's the one line of advice you would give them?
Be authentic and be yourself. I think that's extremely underrated. I think that a lot of people think that they have to go out there and be a particular version of themselves. And that's because, especially in a general election, you're speaking to as many people as possible, and it's very difficult to make everybody happy. So people take the safe bet and try and be robotic versions of themselves.
Yeah.
But I think that more and more people want to see the person behind the policy, and they want to be able to see the character that guides that pen. I think more and more that's becoming important in political discourse. I think a lot of people are tired of seeing political cliches and the political status quo. And there is a whole group of people who are not involved in politics. There's a whole group of people who are not represented in politics. And that's the challenge again with the system, is that the people who show up to vote oftentimes get their priorities recognized. It's the people who either don't vote or didn't vote in a particular group or a certain interest group that don't necessarily get their views and policies reflected in government.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge.
That's a tale as old as time, definitely.
Yes.
Saeed, this has been awesome. I put you on the hot seat. You, as always, skillfully were able to navigate some of the questions that you threw at you. But I think for me, I love your background, your story, the things that you've done, what you've accomplished. I had no idea, had no insight into your origin story as well, which is beautiful. And so do you in terms of how you are now, one of the most sought after individuals and now organizations on the GR side, government relations side in Canada. And there's a number of us that are rooting for you. I'm not surprised that you have been pleasantly surprised by the outreach, the engagement, the interest in the work you're doing, because you're good at what you do. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and hearing about your pivots and your overall experience as well. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be on your podcast. I can't wait to listen to it. And again, I'm rooting for you always. So thank you for having me.
Man. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.